Subscribe right now and hit the bell icon, or this fat spider will crawl over your face while you sleep. Today we have in store for you our own top 10 animals that nature has treated unfairly. Our list consists of picks such as how horses can only breathe through their mouths and the sad case of the goats literally freeze when a predator attacks them, so they get picked off first. If you think those picks are crazy, wait until you hear our top 5 picks. With that being said, let's start with our number 10. Ants make circles until they die. This happens a lot more than you'd think. The main reason as to why this happens is because the great majority of ants are actually blind, with a small percentage of them having extremely blurry eyesight, which leads them to having to focus on a pheromone that they secrete in order to know where they've been and where they're heading towards. The problem with this, however, is the fact that they often end up trampling each other, which mixes up the pheromones, leading to this mosh pit that you see right here. It looks pretty fun, doesn't it? No, actually it doesn't, since the ants end up walking in circles until they eventually drop dead. The only way to stop them is to force them apart, which is very unlikely to happen in nature, unless the friendly neighborhood anteater is willing to give them a helping hand, or tongue. Number 9. Dogs chase their prey too much. Now, we're all supportive of our pets and their bloodthirsty animal selves. But there comes a time when even we need to say that sometimes it's best to drop the hunt before something like this happens. This mummy was discovered inside a tree stump 20 years after the poor dog ended up climbing inside of a tree to chase after a supposed squirrel. The mummy was discovered in 1980, and as much as we'd like to commend the dog for most likely getting its prey after all, we can't condone this since the dog actually didn't quite make it out alive, as you can tell yourself from these pictures here. Number 8. Snakes eat themselves to death. Snakes are infamous for being extremely hungry at all times. They are the types of animals that are willing to eat anything that moves, even when that thing is bigger than them. The problem here is that not all snakes are as smart as you may think, as it is actually extremely common for them to actually end up biting down on their own tails and eating themselves to death. As gruesome and metal as that may sound, the acid inside of the snake ends up killing the snake off within hours of it ingesting its own tail. This is definitely not the smartest animal on our list. Number 7. Goats freeze when in danger. You might have seen a funny video in the past couple years depicting people scaring goats only for them to go solid within milliseconds after the initial jump scare. This is for some reason the only way for goats to actually fight off predators. And it's actually sad that goats were originally bred into this by humanity as a means to protecting other sheep. Literally. Literally offering themselves to the predators and allowing the herd to run away safely. Now, we can't attest for whether or not this is true, but we can say, however, that this is not an evolutionary trait we'd ever want for ourselves. Number 6. The hummingbird will starve in 2 hours. This is not a joke. This is an actual evolutionary trait that the hummingbird has evolved for itself. Essentially, if a hummingbird doesn't get enough nectar, it will end up starving to death within 2 hours. If you think that's not extreme enough to be on this list, have you seen how small the hummingbird is? It is so small, in fact, that anything can end up hurting them, including raindrops. That's right, raindrops can end up taking a hummingbird down in an instant, completely incapacitating it altogether. Number 5. Swans can die from a broken heart. This is a famous case that was recorded a few years ago, showcasing just how terrible human beings can be and just how much a mother can truly suffer after losing its babies. The story goes as follows. A group of teenagers decided it would be fun to throw bricks at the eggs of a swan, which were extremely close to hatching. After seeing its poor babies butchered like that, the swan ended up grieving for so long that it ended up losing its life in the process. The poor creature actually died of a broken heart. It's truly painful to even consider this case without tearing up. Number 4. Sloths are too slow to escape predators. As opposed to most other animals out there, the sloths are literally defenseless when anything decides that they look appetizing. They're actually so slow that they cannot escape even the slowest of predators out there, because they cannot process such a slow creature as a real creature after all. So is this a win or a lose? You decide. Number 3. Giant isopods live off of scraps. Whenever you see a picture of a massive isopod, you probably think that this creature needs to eat a lot to keep itself this large. But in fact, these creatures don't actually eat all that much after all. Or, better said, they don't eat a lot of good food. In fact, giant isopods live off the decaying carcasses of whatever fish died and went all the way down to 8,000 feet under the sea level. Luckily, however, the creatures do get to live pretty comfortably down there. without the fear of any other predators attacking them while they seek food themselves, but that still doesn't excuse the nature of the horrible diet it got the poor giant isopods on. Number 2. Horses choke to death eating. The problem with a horse's design is that they can only breathe through their mouths. So whenever they get a little too greedy with their food, they can actually end up choking to death if they're not careful. This happens a lot more than you'd think. It is even said that most older horses end up dying because they cannot regulate their breathing and eating anymore. This truly is a sad outcome for such majestic beings. Number 1. Moose become zombies. As scary as this may sound, it's real. These symptoms are caused by the parasite known as brainworm, that essentially grabs onto the scalp of the moose and ends up drilling inside of it to get its brains. The poor animal doesn't make it alive most of the time, with it slowly losing control of its body and eventually keeling over and dying in the snow. Before this happens, however, they can end up walking around like zombies for literally hours, just dangling their heads left and right everywhere they go. Wow, which of these animals got the worst deal from Mother Nature? Let us know in the comments below. Also, click the like button and subscribe for more awesome content. And check out the recommended videos on the left and right side of the screen. See ya!